Bonsoir, mesdames and messieurs, and welcome to the world premiere Q&A for What Mary Saw here at the 2021 Fantasia Film Festival. You lucky people are the very first audience to see this film, and the last thing Mary saw. Terribly sorry. And we are joined tonight by most, if not all, of the film's cast and crew. Let's all please start checking in and start introducing yourselves. Let's start with the film's co-writer and director Edoardo Vitaletti. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Almost close. This is Vitaletti. Yes, I'm the writer and director.
This has not been my year for getting people's last names right. I got to be honest with that. Edoardo, please introduce everyone else from the team who we have with us.
Yes, of course. So, hi everybody. First of all, who's watching? I'm very happy to be here talking about The Last Thing Mary Saw. I'm the writer-director of the movie, and I'm going to start kind of in order of where I'm seeing people on my Zoom. So definitely not in order of preference or anything, but I see on my top left our production designer, Charlie Robinson, and then I have our 4 producers, Aimee Schoof, Isen Robbins, and Madeleine Schumacher and Harrison Allen, our wonderful DP, David Kruta, and our main actor, leading star, Stefanie Scott, who plays Mary in the movie that's titled after her character. So that's all of us.
We welcome you all. We would have loved to have had this as in-person screening at the beautiful Imperial Cinema, which is where I'm located right now. But we are extremely honored that you guys have let Fantasia host the world premiere of this film. This is a movie with a lot of layers. There's a lot going on here, not just in terms of the characters, but in terms of the era, in terms of the era that the story's set in. A lot of the history to go with it. Let's talk about kind of. Does this film begin the story for you? Did this begin perhaps say with your experiences with religion, or was this more a desire to tell kind of an intimate love story with many different dimensions?
I think it was kind of a combination of both. I think the religious aspect of my personal upbringing, being from Italy, which is a kind of a fairly homogenous country as far as religious preference, is a very Catholic country, and so some of the kind of contradictions of the religious like impositions and culture and the kind of general philosophy that goes with that made me think about the story a little bit and made me wonder, how can I shed some light of what I personally feel are some of the inconsistencies and the kind of what are some of the things that are always presented as trying to do some sort of greater good, and instead which is just a guise for ultimately hurting people. And I think that kind of created the emotional narrative of the 2 main characters in the movie. And then as far as like the visuals and the setup, I've always been fascinated by the time period. I was doing at a time where when I came up with the story, a lot of kind of visual research and especially paintings and whatnot. And I noticed a lot of like visual threads that interested me from a lot of European art that had to do with the representation of the funerals, very like still lives, female subjects, and kind of 19th century houses and whatnot. And so that created some of the environment of the movie, and the story kind of started brewing from there. And this is where it landed.
And why, this, you touch upon this, but this particular era, I mean, it's really kind of a fascinating time in American history. It's the pre-Civil War era. We're about 15, 20 years or so outside from that. The country is still a relatively new country, but it's still a very puritanical country. What was it that specifically made it, 1843 that you had to set the story in?
Well, In particular, in kind of the greater New York area, like upstate New York, a lot of like the like English Long Island area at that time in history, they were seeing a great kind of religious resurgence. It's like I think the area, especially upstate, it was known at that time as the burnt over district, and it was known as such because it was kind of looked at as like burning so much with religious fervor that it was almost like burning as a whole, and so it just felt like a particular fitting time. It was a time of kind of reestablishing like some of those puritanical like values that took that area of the country by storm towards the end of the 17th century. And was about, you know, like bringing some of those ideas back, and so it created, with the fervor and with the kind of religious enthusiasm, a lot of obsession and a lot of hysteria came with that, and so that felt like a particularly fitting time, kind of mid-century, as you said, at a time like right before the country went through a very deep shift.
Was there anything in particular in your research into the era that you discovered that you were like, oh wait, this has to go, this has to go into the film, or it added a new dimension to the film?
I think there was, as far as the religious aspect, that was a time I think where the Adventist movement was started to take over a little bit, and there was like this great kind of absurd belief that the second coming of Jesus Christ was bound to happen imminently. And so I think 1843 and 1844 is a time of like, it's known as the Great Disappointment, where like a lot of people who ascribe to like the Adventist movement, they were all confident that the second coming of Jesus Christ was going to materialize, and it didn't, needless to say, right? And so I found that fitting. I found that for me and for us, and when we were doing our research, I thought that was kind of an interesting little detail to inform just the general atmosphere of the story. So that definitely, that fascinated me. Yeah.
It's also, you know, it's a great cold weather genre film, you know, and was winter integral to the setting? Did you feel like I have to set this story in the winter, or was it just a matter of, okay, we're gearing up production and it happens to be cold out?
I mean, the atmosphere of the story came pretty much at the same time as the story itself. So winter turned out to be a very fitting time in which to set it. I don't necessarily think that I had originally in the writing set it to happen in the winter. What happened is, I think that our shooting schedule kind of aligned with that, but it was so kind of happened like retroactively a little bit, where it happening in the winter began to inform so many of the choices that we were making. And so it was kind of a perfect storm that happened for us, and it made everything much harder, much more, I think, unpleasant, and overall, I think, much better, because it made its way into the way that we shot it, the way it looks, the way it feels. So, yeah.
And I would think too that yeah, you know, as you said, the way it looks and the way it feels, but also, you know, those houses, and you were shooting in, you know, a kind of, it wasn't a set. This was an actual house from the era, correct?
Yeah, it was.
And while they do have, you know, modern heating installed, they're still pretty creaky. You know.
Yeah, the modern heating was present in most areas. There were some rooms that didn't quite have it. I think our cast may remember some of them, because at some point I think the green room got a little cold. But you know, we looked for the location for a long time, because we were pretty set on shooting the film on a real location that wasn't a studio, because, you know, the precision and the aesthetic of the time period had to be a character. And there's not much in the New York, you know, the greater New York area that has been left untouched since the 1800s. So finding the place that was that looked right, that was also comfortable enough to shoot in, that provided the right atmosphere it was, once we locked that, I think we all had a collective feeling, okay, this movie is coming to life now, because it was definitely difficult. But the property that we shot in was originally built in the 1700s, and some additions were made throughout, I think, the 18 and 1900s, to what it is now. It's a beautiful property, very, it was very, very helpful to us.
And where is this for those who might want to visit it?
Well, it's out on Long Island. I don't necessarily want to provide an address for those who actually.
No, of course, yeah. I didn't mean...
No, but jokes aside, it is on Long Island, I think, in the greater kind of Stony Brook area. That much I remember. Yes, it's very beautiful. At some point, maybe we'll do like a nice screening out there when it's warm and a little nicer. But yeah,
you got a few more weeks left for that.
Yeah, sure.
Let's talk about integrating the occult element into the story. Was this something that, again, going into the research and kind of not just the religious fervor of the era, but also the occult trappings of the era, because there was some of it around, as we know, but it was all very unique and very specific. So talk a bit about that.
Yeah, my itch, I think, when it comes to Christianity is that so many times people associate the concept of occult with pagan religions, beliefs, cults, and whatnot, or something that's outside of the realm of Christianity. But when instead, when you look at the history of Christianity and how people interpreted the Bible, sometimes it's like there's a lot of kind of unofficial, literature that made its way. Like there's a lot of apocryphal scriptures and whatnot. So to me, what I personally cared about was to like unearth some of that. It's like, okay, let's take some of these kind of imageries of kind of Christian, if not paganism, at least like folklore. It's like there is a lot of stuff that made its way pretty prominently and in the general understanding of Christianity that it's not considered official. And it's like, stories that have more to do with sexuality, darkness, torture, things like murder too, alternative ideas of, how a certain event happened, like the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and things like that. And I think there's a whole like plethora of that. And sometimes a Christianity kind of gets away with murder on that. It's like it all feels like not pagan or not devilish or not part of the occult, but they got a lot going there. And that interested me because I think it's to some degree that felt even more genuine, perhaps even.
And of course, the film has, while it being a period piece, has tremendous relevance to current events. And obviously that was, I'm sure that was part of the intention going into the story.
Yeah, the idea for me was always to represent, in the main two characters, to bring these two people to life whose goal, stays the same from the beginning to the end of the movie, right? And it's like I wasn't necessarily too interested in a movie that talked about like how their love story came about and like how they worked their way through like the inevitable, having lived in the family that Mary lives in, having been surrounded by those people. I would imagine that coming to terms with who she is may have been like a kind of a path filled with guilt, of course. But to me, what was interesting to me was to start the story after she already made that decision for herself. This is the person that I want to be close with. This is who I am. And it's a movie about how to affirm that, how to reaffirm that, having already made that decision for herself. So I think in that sense, I try to take that angle. And in that sense, I do think it's relevant because there are so many people who, like even to this day, when you're done fit in a specific box as far as your sexuality or religious beliefs. It's always that you have to justify your choices, and you have to show proof that you're suffered enough to get to that understanding. And I just don't believe that, because there are so many other people who don't do that ever. Yeah. And this is a movie about two people who don't want to necessarily apologize for who they are, but who want to just be together.
And you know, in addition to being a great, you know, film that has great supernatural elements, it's also a great drama, but it's also a very powerful love story. And so, Stefanie, I wanted to talk to you about bringing that bond together with Isabelle Fuhrman, your co-star, and also for you getting into that headspace of that era. You know, whereas nowadays you wouldn't, you know, blink an eye at a situation like this, but back in those days, this was absolutely taboo. So
yeah. Well, first off, you go.
Go ahead. Well, so developing the bonds, the bond with Isabelle.
Yeah, the bond between, I think if I heard you correctly, yeah, I had a really great bond with Isabelle, who played Eleanor. We've actually known each other for a really long time before we even did this film together. So it was really great to have that already. I mean, on top of it, we lived together during the filming of the movie. So we shared a house and a car together. And I think that kind of helped also, because we were together all the time. And we really went through the whole thing together. Yeah, I think the bond just came easy because we have a great friendship, and we truly trust each other. And she's so talented, and it made it really easy to really live in the role with her.
And to get into the headspace of someone, you know, from that era, and you know, at a time when this was extremely taboo. For you and for Isabelle, you know, beyond just what was in the material itself, you know, how was that process for you? What was that process for you?
Eduardo actually sent me, if you remember, a bunch of texts and books and stuff from that time that he found at a library or something, like all of these scans from, I guess, people's like firsthand accounts of their daily lives back in the day of this era. And kind of like their daily schedule and the prayer and how rigorous the prayers were, and like kind of like how like tightly wound their lives were at the same time, but how they found beauty in everything at the same time. It was pretty cool, because the movie is so beautiful. It's like, it's shot so beautifully, and it's in such a beautiful location, and you can really see the God in those things. Yet like the people in the movie who are preaching God are kind of like making hell for these two girls in the house. So I guess that was pretty cool. Thank you, Eduardo, for sending me all of those. And other than that, I guess everybody kind of had like a slight accent of that time as well, which you know, we got to find, as well as the clothes, which were great. And him telling me to put my shoulders back, because sometimes I slouch, or, you know, it's so 2020, 2021 to kind of have a chill posture. But that was really like a no-go, you know? So I guess those are the things that kind of make it really easy to be in that time period, as well as the house that we were in. Like everything, you know, it wasn't like people were, I don't know, you really felt like you were there, because the house, the wardrobe, everything was kind of like you were there all the time. We didn't really leave the location except for one day at the very end. So I guess they made it pretty simple for everybody.
And let's talk about the challenges, kind of open question for everyone, the challenges of shooting a period piece on kind of a limited budget and a limited schedule. We've spoken about the location, which certainly lends a tremendous amount to it. But let's just talk about, you know, those kinds of challenges of getting 1843 on the screen in 2020 or 2021 and making it look, you know, like we were there.
That's definitely a question for our production designer and the DP. I would love them to walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a big part was finding the right bones, surely, for the set, and you know, really, I guess, leaning into what the place had to offer. There was a rock wall outside that we sort of built three walls around that rock wall, which had a period oven in it, and we put a roof over it, made that sort of our kitchen with doors that we could come in and out of and such. So and then the space being sort of limited and boxing everybody in, playing into sort of like the themes of the movie and the temperament of the movie, which is about, keeping secrets and oppressiveness and such. We tried to like play with clutter, and you see in the kitchen there's a big pole sort of blocking things, and there's always sort of a cross in the corner that we would look at. Again, on the limited budget, we sort of tried to lean into a more minimalist look as well, not only because a lot of the paintings that we looked at for inspiration included that type of composition, but because it really lent itself to the sparseness of their environment and how, she's got her book. I'm saying Stefanie's got her book that she's, hiding in a little cupboard with a key, or Isabel's got some of her things hidden within the kitchen. It's like these elements that sort of might, trip people up or something as far as limitations go. In fact, oftentimes make it feel much more alive and much more lived in, as opposed to building something out on a soundstage, which can sometimes feel a little rigid. I'm sure David could step in at plenty about some of the limitations we had in shooting the rooms. Remember, we had one room that we redressed from another set to make it look different, and what did we shoot in the mirror for this shot, and now the space is completely different. So those types of creative things that arise when there are limitations, which, it's always better to have limitations in some ways than a blank canvas in a lot of cases. The character comes out of these things as opposed to it feeling a little sterile maybe, or a little polished.
Yeah, Charlie, you did a really, really great job, and I love the work you did, especially on the kitchen. I mean, that should not have happened the way it happened, but you made it come together. I honestly, there's a part of me that always says, okay, we need more resources, we need this, we need that, but in a way, having this time period and knowing that everything was either going to be, the daylight streaming through the windows, or a candle, or a fire, it's which one of the three, and then it's just figuring out how to pull that off. And this film to me was really an exercise in collaboration and trying to figure things out. We had a really amazing team from top to bottom that would get together and say, hey, this is like what we want to accomplish with this. We might not be able to accomplish it in the way that we imagine it first, but let's think about it, and let's come together, and let's look at an angle, or, a blocking scenario or something that tells the scene, that tells the story. And oftentimes we would just go back to our references, which was very heavily referenced in paintings from that era. And we would look at how can we create a composition where maybe this entire scene is, like Charlie said, shot through a mirror, or with a candle in the foreground, and that's it. Letting frames go black, letting the light do what it does. One of my favorite shots is a shot of the people coming in through the field with the candles, and it's just four orbs of light floating through until they get close enough where you can see their faces, and it's just so ominous. And no one's sitting out there with condors and balloons and generators. It's just four candles walking through the night, and for me, what's that?
I was going to say, how many actual candles are in each of those lanterns? You remember?
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, they were candles. There were many, but yeah, I mean, that to me is an example of everybody kind of getting together and saying, look, we agree with this. We agree that this is the thing that we're going to do to tell the story. And we're willing to take this risk and not play it safe because it will work. And in a way, there's also the situation where it's like, we don't really have a choice. So, so it's both a bold choice and a dictated one by the gods of cinema or whatever.
Yeah, jumping off of what David had said real quick, it's like those limitations also begin to play into not only how the movie is made, but it was always something that me and Edoardo and David and my team had sort of talked about, in that the things we were seeing on screen end up being used, tools that, you know, you could probably make a checklist of the things that are actually within the movie, as opposed to having an infinite amount of supplies and an infinite amount of props. There's some things to say about the fact that we see one knife and then we see it later, and it's sort of the things that are, is almost like a house that ran like an actual house of that time, where they wouldn't have so many things maybe. So the limitations of that era as well played into the film vibe of itself.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, the part of the collaboration was having you think about the set that way. And, you know, it showed me that you were invested in the story, and it inspired thoughts of my own in terms of, okay, so if that knife, like you said, is being used in this other scene, what does that mean? You know, and how can we incorporate that into this other scene? You know, so it was, you know, again, for me, it was a great example in how people collaborate and collaborate well.
And you touched upon this. You were talking about some of the paintings of the era. What were some of the other key visual influences on the film?
I mean, I'll be honest, like my entire mood book that I presented Eduardo is all paintings. Like, we did not reference films. I went through paintings of the era. I would not be able to sit here and just name artists off the top of my head. But, you know, I think we were very inspired by the texture of it. And I think that looking at the paintings also kind of informed the framing of the film. You know, like typically paintings, you might have vertical ones, you might have ones that have weird compositions, but they're always within a frame, they're always within a boundary. And, you know, part of the cinematography was very insistent on showing just how everybody is very oppressed or repressed. You know, they can't get out of their situation, right? So much like a painting, you know, you had all these boundaries that you had to set, and it was mostly done with the lack of camera movement, you know, but the lighting informed that as well, in the sense of, you know, we wanted everything to feel kind of gloomy and feel like there was, you know, storm coming, and you just had to sit inside and wait it out and see what happens, you know.
So I just want to say, for those who are watching, questions are open, or, you know, for our viewers. All you got to do is type in a question, and if you have one for the team, we're more than happy to read it out. But let's touch also upon the casting. This is very much an ensemble piece, and you know, we've spoken to Stefanie a little bit, but let's get into finding this cast, and, you know, bringing these characters, finding the right actors to bring these characters to life, and specifically talking about Stefanie and Isabel, and finding them and getting them on board.
Yeah, I can talk about this one, and also I would like to definitely bring, like, right from the beginning, I was working like I think Stefanie was the first person that I ended up working with, and then we started working with Isabel, because those two characters were so important. But I like, with our casting director, you know, we worked a lot with all the other characters, and like, there's certainly, like, because it is a period piece, there is certainly something that has to work on the performance level as much as on the look level to some degree. So also, you know, like, with the casting, like, we always had people in mind who could also, like, fit a particular, you know, look. Like, like, that then was further developed in with the costumes, like a certain hairstyle and whatnot. So that was also, like, strangely enough, even though, like, it's not necessarily typical, but I think when you're making a horror a period piece, that's something to keep in mind. And then if you remember, Stefanie, we were working, I think you worked a little bit, like, independently with our hair and makeup.
Yeah.
Like, and you guys kind of, like, chose your hairstyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the movie a little bit, which was kind of cool. It was super cool. It made me very, very happy. But yeah, I mean, those are also, like, a lot of choices that my producers and I were kind of, you know, like, weighing on together. And I mean, we're really happy. We're really lucky. And, like, I was working with a batch of just I don't know, like, every time I end up watching my movie, I'm just, like, kind of sitting back, and I don't know, I feel very, very lucky for the pool of great actors that we got to work with, you know, from Stefanie, from Isabel, Rory, Judith, a bunch of, like, really great like a lot of great actors from New York who kind of knew each other already coming into the production, which kind of helped a little bit too. But yeah, and also like a lot of curiosity. Like we were working a lot on the. I think one of the first questions that you asked me, Stefanie, was, how should I speak? Like, what's the accent that I should have? And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be like so much fun. And that was a big part of the process too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And talk a bit about finding that voice and the research, if any, that went into. I mean, the dialects of the era were very specific.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't really have a reference from the exact time because there aren't really any voice recordings from 1843. I think there might be like one or two, but they're very grainy. So I'm not quite sure exactly how they sound. But that was probably the most exciting part, honestly. I think a lot of it came from, I guess, I don't know. I think a lot of the books and stuff that Edoardo sent me, there's kind of a melody and a different way of speaking in all of them. A lot more proper and such, but I don't know. I guess just reading that and then kind of like letting it live in you and seeing what happens. I guess I know there's some potentially like Irish, British dialects that are kind of blended into it, kind of that and mix of that and like modern American and stuff because it's kind of a transition in the voice. So.
I was like kind of terrified at first when I had to like answer that question, honestly, because it's true. I mean, of course, like we don't have like an actual answer, but I remember when I began working with this great dialect coach, Charlie Layton, who gave us this recording, and he was like, what you find out ultimately is, unless you're going back like a few hundred years earlier, like you always end up ultimately sounding fairly close to what modern American is like. It's just with an inflection. A lot of people, and myself included, like I had this kind of personal misunderstanding that I thought, okay, they're all going to have to sound British. And then when you do enough research, you realize that, 1840s, 50s accents are generally closer to modern American than they are to, in any way, to British. So it was subtle, but it was really fun. Like I always, when I see especially scenes with Stefanie and Isabel, who had two different accents, and how those subtle differences play together. I'm very proud of that for sure.
I have an audience question from Eric, who is asking about Rory Culkin and his performance in the film. Loved his work. Wanted to ask about Stefanie, ask about you working with Rory, but also about getting him on board on the project.
Well, I had a fantastic time working with him. I mean, he's so amazing in the movie, and he only worked for one day on the shoot. And so he had to do all of those scenes in one day, which is pretty epic. He really came in and like, I don't know, he blew me away, and he was such a nice person to work with. I don't know.
Those scenes are incredibly tension filled too. And,
yeah.
And he really brings a lot of that. It's like
he's so intense. Oh my gosh, it was kind of terrifying, honestly. Isabel and I are like, even though it's a very intense kind of slow burn, dark movie, we're very lighthearted people, and we're always laughing and stuff. And then as soon as he walked on set and we were all working with him, we were like, oh my gosh, it just felt so in the best way, so intense. And he really brought this amazing mood on the set that really, I think, gave that really intense energy to all of those scenes. So he's fantastic. And I'm so stoked to hear how he even became part of the project from you guys.
Yeah, I think he was also one of the early castings. And I remember that, like, I met with him after we talked about the possibility of working together. And I remember, in his kind of perfect fashion, like, he's we started to chat about the movie, and he was like, kind of asking me right off the bat, like, what did I just read? Like, what was this? Because he could kind of feel it and understand it on an emotional kind of a curiosity type level, but then he had to like peel off a few things, and like then things started become more rational, but I think he was really fascinated by the eeriness and the kind of craziness of his character, who is, I think, it's funny that he came on set for such a short time, and he came also towards the end. And it's like, I think for everybody, I mean, for me, for the rest of the cast, like Stefanie was saying, it was kind of this injection of like a different energy that broke through the shoot, which is kind of exactly what he does in the movie. So it all kind of worked out very well altogether. So he was stellar. Yeah.
And I have to ask about Judith Roberts, who I guess many people in the audience know from Orange Is the New Black, but I mean, she's had a fascinating career over the years. She's an Eraserhead, for Pete's sake, and she's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal as the matriarch. So talk a bit about her casting and then also working with her.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like she's one of the loveliest people you will ever meet just in your life, period. Like she's just beyond lovable, and she just stepped into this very like, you know, dark and like oppressive kind of matriarchal suit that you know, just fits so well for her. And yeah, I mean, it was like her conversation kind of reminded me a lot of the ones that I was having with Rory, you know, because they are two of the darkest characters. It's like I can see this character and like how she's moving around the story and everything. And I feel like she and I especially were very interested in finding some answers as to what is happening and why, but we're also very interested in keeping a lot of questions open. Like I think one of our goals, I remember during our first conversation, she was like, you know, I don't want to necessarily know where like she ends up, but I know exactly like who she is. And I think that was always like a little bit of a direction that we took with her, because I think she has this kind of overall overarching control over what's happening, but she doesn't like show it as much, you know. It's just she kind of gets you when everything is complete, when the full picture is complete and it's before you. She kind of shows that she was entirely behind it, and I think that's what got us, both me and her, very excited about it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, she is very much like, you know, her character is very much the puppet master, you know, of it all. And so much, I mean, if you could say that the film has a villain, so to speak, you know, it would be her. And what's really fascinating is she doesn't play it as such. You know, she really genuinely believes in everything that she's doing. She really believes in this. And that was something that I just, you know, really could not, that was something I took away from the picture, that she's just so, you know, again, I hate to use the term villain, but you know, your story is only as good as its antagonist. And she really brings a lot of the intensity, you know, to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I personally like the word villain. Like, I think she is one, you know, in the best way, in that, you know, that she is, the creepiness of her character to me comes from how like she knows when to unleash how much she knows about what's happening. She kind of keeps it and then she kind of unleashes it. And I think it's in perfect villain fashion. I mean, she played it with this, with great style, almost, really. So yeah.
Stefanie, was she like that on set? Was she sort of in character as you were shooting, or was there definitely a Judith? Okay, now you're with Judith, and now you're with Patriarch kind of situation. Oops, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay.
Happens every Q&A. Don't worry. Happens every Q&A.
I'm sure. No, I said she, just like Edoardo said, she was the most lovely person to work with. Just lovely person to be around. So totally opposite from when she's on screen and when he calls action.
And Stefanie, 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
The first is from Celia. How your experience with the special effects makeup on your eyes?
Oh yeah, that was crazy. I actually was totally blind. It was prosthetics over my eyes to when my eyes are gouged out. So I had those put on in the morning and they'd be on all day. I was just kind of like lying down, waiting for someone to tell me what to do because I had no idea what time it is or where I was. But yeah, it was really awesome. They did an amazing job.
And a question from Julie about the costumes, about having to wear those costumes. And I guess too, we should segue too into your costume designer. But Stefanie, let's start with you having to wear these outfits all day long.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, that's a big part of what made it easy to get into character and stuff, and to make sure I put my shoulders back was having these outfits on that I couldn't really wrinkle or couldn't really sit as comfortably in. It was super helpful for the role. And the costume department did such an amazing job putting these together, I think, in the time that they had. And I don't know, I was so blown away when we were there and everybody was dressed like that. It really felt like we were somewhere else.
And let's talk too about the costume designer. And we've got 4 producers here. And so if any one of them wants to chime in to talk about costume designing, the costume design, and also, just kind of, this is a situation where you can't just go and get vintage clothing. You have to make this all. So anyone wants to touch upon that?
Oh, a fun little fact is that we've done, I think, 4 films with the costume designer, Sophia, and those costumes started on 3 movies before us in the 1940s, and then she got them, and they were many pieces of the movie Tesla, right, which we did, and then the Tesla people were nice enough to give us all their costs. We produced Tesla, but the Millennium in that group were nice enough to let us have those costumes. And so these costumes have traveled through time, like from the 40s to the turn of the century into the 1800s.
So in a way, Stefanie is wearing vintage costumes. It's just not going back to the 1840s.
Yeah.
So for all you know, you reach in a pocket and you find you find some piece of paper from the 1940s from what film would it have been made in the 1940s? I'm fascinated by that.
I have to admit, I don't remember, or I don't think I ever knew. She's so resourceful in making spinning straw into gold, that, and so budget conscious, and meticulous in her research. We love to work with her and will forever.
And I've got a question from Nick, who is asking, did you shoot the film pre or post COVID?
Pre-COVID, right before. Yeah.
But not all of it.
Not all of it. That's right. We posted through COVID and did these really kind of crazy pickup shots during COVID, which David and other folks got really creative. And to get these punch-ins and pickups, we had 4 or 5 different pickup units with people that owned the props that we needed to pick up and cameras. And we would do these little mini shoots as to not expose others. And 1 or 2 people, 3 people, little pieces for these pickup shots. So it's actually pretty incredible. Charlie and David both really bent over backwards to help us get these pickup shots. And so we were posting and editing and doing these things to complete the film during COVID, which proved to be, really challenging and really interesting. But I don't think anybody can tell. And, it worked. It was sort of movie magic during this time. It was really, it was fun.
And do you feel that granted, nobody was asking for that extra editing time, but do you feel like that extra time gave you more time to refine the film in the edit?
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, the answer is it just has to be always yes, because you don't finish editing a movie, generally you just run out of time. That's the general rule, I think. And having more time give us a chance, you know, like to hone in a little bit on some of the parts of the movie that needed more work. You know, we did a lot of kind of odd ADR stuff, because I don't think we worked on many lines, but I remember working for, like, I did like a session with you, Stefanie, for like a couple hours. That was few lines, but also like there was a lot of kind of small movements and like some breathings that we managed to, that I really wanted to add. That was it. I felt like I kind of tortured you for a couple hours with that. Well, like little close-ups where we, like, I really wanted to feel the character more. So that also gave us more time to do that. It was, yeah, it was a long, I mean, every day felt just very long and every week felt very short. We were in this kind of loop of time is passing in an odd way. But like, I mean, I also felt very lucky because, you know, me and our 4 producers here, like we were the people that were kind of always on it. And I mean, they were just, I don't know, they were kind of always there for me during the whole time. And like, we were talking about notes and revisions and whatnot. So it was, I felt very supported, but the added time helped. Yeah, for sure.
And now the film is done. It is out there in the world. Let us tell everybody what's next for The Last Thing Mary Saw.
Well, we are very, very lucky that we are going to be working with Shudder, who just picked up our movie, and we're super excited to work with them. And so we will give a chance for people to see it sometime in 2022. So you know, I'm super thrilled and honored. I'm sure that everybody is here on this chat. Like, we're just very, very excited. But yeah, soon enough, in a few months, I guess, we will give a chance for people to see it.
And in between then, probably more festival screenings. And,
yes, Fright Fest will be next. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, you're in the UK. Please, but you guys able to go, or is this going to be another virtual situation?
It will be a live screening. Yes. I don't know if many of us are going, maybe 1 or 2, but it will be a live screening, so that'll be exciting. Yeah.
It is a lot of fun, and it's at a very big theater in Leicester Square. So
yes,
you guys are in for a great time. We want to thank
Harrison and Madeleine are going, right?
Are you guys going for sure? Yes, awesome.
Yeah, should be fun.
So we want to thank the entire team from The Last Thing Mary Saw. Thank you to Edoardo. Thank you to Stefanie, Aimee, Charlie, Isen, Harrison, Madeleine, David, everyone. And you guys, all the viewers, please do not forget, talk about this movie. You know, hit the socials, tweet about it, post about it on your Instagram, post about it on your Facebook, wherever, your TikTok. Spread the word, because this is a small independent film. These films really do require your word of mouth. You know, yes, it's going to be playing on Shudder, but we want a ton of people to watch it on there so it becomes a big success. So on behalf of the entire Fantasia team, thank you so much for everyone, for allowing us to host the film's world premiere, for coming here tonight, and for making a really terrific film.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
All right. Thank you so much. Bon cinema, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.